Cool, we're rolling. Here we go. Hey everybody, Josiah here. I like to do daily Photoshop compositions, compose almost every day throughout the week on Instagram, and they're just really quick. I don't spend a ton of time on them. It's just a way to get creative thoughts out there and just kind of keep my Photoshopping skills fresh. I recently had someone reach out to me and say, how do you insert a spaceship into a scene and make it look realistic? So I figured I would just make a quick tutorial and kind of show how I would work through that process. Now, Photoshop is of course huge. You can do all sorts of paths to get to the same answer. This is just kind of how I would tackle this this quick job. So I think step one is we create a spaceship. So let's make that nice and quick. And then part two would be obviously to insert this spaceship into the photo that I took. And I usually just take a really simple photo with my iPhone, nothing fancy, and insert stuff with that. It's just really quick. Always have my iPhone on me, so that's usually where I shoot a lot of my base plates for the Photoshopping. So without any further ado, let us get started. Here we go. So let's go to File, New, and let's just make a quick composition because we're going to need to make the spaceship. Now, I already have a few spaceship assets that are built from, or that I pulled off from offline. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna warp the heck out of them and kind of do our own thing with it. So it's gonna be super garbagey, it's gonna be super fast, but it should look great when it's all said and done. So our background layer, real quick, if I just hit Command-I on a Mac or Control-I on a Windows machine, we can invert that color, make it black, a lot easier to see. So back on our spaceship, let's just go ahead and we have our quick selection, we have a magic wand tool. These kind of work, you've probably used some of them before and you can see they do a really quick outline. Sometimes that works, sometimes you can do a color selection. We're just gonna do this real quick. It's gonna be super easy, like I said. We're gonna go down to the bottom here and do a quick layer mask. And we're gonna hit Command-I again to invert that. And we are good to go. We have our quick cutout. It's right there, bam. Number one done. So let's go ahead and mute that layer real quick. And secondly, I would say we'll just grab another quick spaceship design here real quick. And let's go ahead and do the exact same thing. Just select the white with our magic wand tool. Just click anywhere in the white and it'll grab it. And you'll see our little marching ants. If for some reason it's not grabbing very well, your tolerance up at the very top you can adjust. If I go to like 100, you'll see the change on what I grab. It grabs like way more. It bleeds into a lot more. Whereas if you were to do something like a much lower number, it would only grab what it saw as pure white. So I usually keep it somewhere in the 20s to the 30s because then it grabs mostly everything, mostly the color that you're going for, but doesn't bleed in too deep. So it's like kind of like a good middle range. And then from there, I can hit my layer mask button again and we'll click Command Invert and we are good to go. So now these spaceships are cut out as well. I don't need absolutely everything that's on here. So at this point, I can just use my mask tool with my M and I can go ahead and just select the ones I don't want. And I can hit Command Backspace and it's gonna get rid of all of those. And oops, not save. Deselect with D. So now I have a couple of spaceships to kind of work off of just to start creating a shape. So first off, I'm gonna create smart objects out of them. I can right click, I can say convert to smart object. I don't know if you can see all that or if it's getting cut off, but whatever, that's what we're doing. Now, once these are smart objects, we can scale them to absolutely any size and it's not going to affect their pixel or their size, so it's perfect. It's perfect for scaling, perfect for building any sort of shape. So I would say at this point, we're really just going to start to try to figure out a basic shape for our overall big spaceship. I want it to be massive, so let's start with just this, and let's go ahead and Command T is going to be to resize. So let's make it like pretty big. We're going to enter and we can hit Command J, we'll duplicate the layer, or you can right click on here and you can hit duplicate layer somewhere on here. Oh yeah, up here at the top. I rarely do it that way. I'm usually a shortcut key sort of guy, so I'll try not to lose you on that. So we have our second one made. Let's go ahead and if I hit Control Command T and hit flip horizontal, it's going to flip it the other way and we can start to just build our basic shape of our spaceship. So once again, I can select both layers now. I can rescale exactly to the size that I want. I definitely do know that I want it to be more of a triangle shape, so we're going to actually go inverted with the whole thing like this. And at this point, once again, Command J, we're just going to start duplicating everything and just start to have fun with it. Here we go. We're going to start to just build out basic shapes and Command J, same thing, flip vertically. If I actually click on it here, you can see now you have a lot more to build with. But what I actually want to do is say flip horizontal. There we go. So now we're starting to create like this really cool triangle shape. And let's go ahead and start working with the other element right now. Command T to reshape again. And I actually want this to be behind, almost like a giant engine thing. So we're going to drop this layer all the way behind. Perfect, just like that. Command J, Command T, flip horizontal. Good. We can get this starting to lock into our overall design exactly how we want it. So you can obviously just have as much fun as you want with this and spend as much time as you'd like, really kind of perfecting all the shapes that you want to get out of this. For me, this is usually the part that I have the most fun because I'm creating like a brand new shape out of other elements. And so a lot of times, oh, this is kind of fun. I can actually go in and one of my favorite things to pull assets from is actually oil rigs. So if I bring in an oil rig, throw it to the top, you'll see they have like tons of texture on them. So any sort of like mechanical elements are really cool to draw from as well. So to do a quick selection on here, I could do the same thing. I could try to do the magic wand, but it's most likely going to do these big chunks and it's going to be a little bit harder to get exactly what we need. I only want a few rough shapes. It's going to be really quick. So what we're going to do is we're just going to mute all these other layers real quick. I'm going to make sure that our layer is selected with the oil rig. We're going to go to select and we can go to color range. And now we get to pick the colors that we want to select. So make sure my eyedropper tool is selected there. And we're going to click, and you can already start to see a haze begin to pick out the color that you pick. Wherever you pick, you're gonna see it's starting to make a selection. So whatever, we'll click on the blue. We can click the little plus button for the eyedropper, and we can start clicking some more blues. So now you can see the image is starting to take shape. As I click on blues, it's grabbing, hopefully, just all the blues. So from there, we can click OK, and it made a rough selection. We can go to layer mask, boom. Same thing, Command I, we have it selected. And let's go ahead and just real quick, we'll just grab the lasso tool with L and we can just paint out what we don't want. So make a real big selection here. Bam, and we're gonna dump this with black, Command backspace. And now that's totally knocked out. So now we have an element, same thing, let's right click, say convert to smart object, and now we have an element that's ready to go. We can turn back all on our layers. From here we have like a really cool, they have just like lots of texture and lots of elements to them. I can't tell you pretty much almost every ship that I've done, any sort of spaceship that I've done, I have used an oil rig as part of it because there's always a lot of really cool elements to draw from in them. There's just, I don't know, it's a cool mechanical beast, as it were. So I'm gonna drop that to the bottom. Yeah, that's good. And let's go Command J again, Command T, flip horizontal, slide that over to this side. Just creating like this cool symmetrical spaceship to begin with. So now what I want to do is obviously like the coloring is totally whack on all of this. So let's go ahead and color it and try to make everything look like it's from the same world. So we're selecting on our oil rigs currently. I'm going to hit Command U. And it's going to bring our hue saturation. Let's just bring the saturation all the way down to the bottom, essentially creating it black and white. This is just a really, really quick way of doing this. And then we can do that with all of these as well. Bam. 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 All right, and then what we're gonna do is select absolutely everything and let's hit Command G and I'll throw it all into one group. So now we have the whole spaceship and we can actually call this Spaceship, if I can spell spaceship correctly. And so yeah, so now we have this ready to go. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply like a few more colors to it and see if we can't make it even a little bit more interesting to look at. So let's go ahead and right down here, we have these other buttons here, which I think go off the screen for you. But if you trust me, you can click this little button down at the bottom and it brings a drop down, which we have way more control. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on curves and it's gonna apply a curves adjustment layer up top. I can hold down Alt and you'll see if I move my cursor in between the two layers, you'll see this other little icon appear. And from there I can click and it will link the curves to only this spaceship. So now any adjustments that I make will only do it to this spaceship layer. So that's a really awesome way to assign colors and everything to just that. So right now we're on our RGB, so I can start to adjust and start to make this thing as dark or as wacky as I want to make it. So let's go ahead and just hit to default. And I'm going to pull out my reds a little bit and make kind of a bluish tint. I'm also going to go to my RGB and I'm going to pull down the whites a bit, trying to make this a little more gray. And okay, so we'll say something like this to begin with. Now what I want to do is add in a few little glowy pieces to make it look more interesting. Actually, before I even go to that, let's hit this real quick. So our elements that were in the background here, I want to do a tiny bit more too. So let's go ahead and Command J that. And we are going to resize. And I want to add just a little bit more. We're going to drop this to the very back. You can just click and drag the layer. It's going to go all the way to the back. Yeah, there we go. That's more exciting. Command J, Command T, flip horizontal, slide this one over here as well. All right, perfect, just like that. And now all of these, let's see, gonna select all 4 of these. We're gonna hit Command G. So now all those background ones are there. I want these to all be black. So we're gonna go to Levels. And once again, we're gonna Alt click. So it's gonna go only onto this layer that has my oil rigs. And now my levels are selected and I can crush these and make them a little bit darker and a little more in the background. Maybe boost up my contrast a little bit. And pull in my whites, just trying to match these a little bit closer to the overall look. Okay, cool. So now up at the very top, let's create a new layer. And I can hit B for brush. It's gonna bring up my brush tool. Which I don't want to do what I just did there. Let's make our opacity 100%. And let's go to our color. And let me add a nice blue glow. So what we're going to do is we're going to try our best to make just a couple of glowy blue points on this whole image that might be where there's either exhaust or just some sort of alien, whatever. It's an alien ship. They have blue glowy things on it. It's just, I'm already overthinking it. All right, so let's go ahead and click around on a couple areas that we feel like would be cool to have some glowy pieces. And maybe one more down here and a couple down here. And I'm resizing with my bracket key. Sorry if I skipped over that. Really easy. It's a great way to just adjust your layers super fast. So we have our blue layer. Let's go ahead and set the blend mode to screen. So we're set to screen. You're gonna see through it a little bit more. Let's create a new layer, ba-boom. And a real shortcut key is if you just press D, it'll reset all of your colors. So, I mean, these colors could be anything in your palette, but as soon as you hit D, it always goes back to default black and white, and then X toggles between forward and background color. So I'm gonna go back to white, make it a little bit smaller, and on my second layer, we're just gonna create little highlights for where these light sources would be coming from. And once again, I can, as these things get smaller, I can hit my small bracket and kind of make them a little bit smaller. So now we have a natural source for the blue to start with. And from here, let's just call this it. We have basically a very basic spaceship. It's very symmetrical, and we'll have some fun with this in a little bit. So from here, we can take everything and create a smart object from it. So if I shift click everything, I can go ahead and say convert to smart object. And now I have literally just a spaceship ready to rock and roll. This is literally as is, it's one unit, it's one piece, I can pull it into my scene. So literally from there, that's what I'm gonna do. So I have my photo and I will bring it in. I was literally just out for a walk with my daughter and grabbed this photo. There's my house. You can find me on Google Images. Now you know exactly where I live. Out for a walk. I was like, I'm just gonna shoot something super basic. That's usually how I shoot most of these types of background templates, is like this. So here we go. It's like a nice silhouette. So what I'm gonna do is I'll go through a couple of tips and tricks on how I would approach this shoot. So, or this edit, this shoot, I don't even know English. And so here we go. I'm going to first thing select my foreground and separate it from my background, because I might want to put some different clouds in there. I know I want the ship in the background. It just gives a lot more options if we're separated to begin with. So let's go ahead, take my background layer, and we can actually just duplicate it, click and drag it down to the duplicate layer, or like we said before, Command J, and you can duplicate it all day long. We don't need that many copies, we just need one more. So from here, we are going to try to give as much contrast as we can so that we can select out of it later. It'll make sense in a second. So here we go. We're going to Command L is going to bring up our levels. And from here, let's try to crush the blacks and bring up the whites. We want as much contrast as possible between that foreground and that background. We really want to try to get these trees out of there. So there we go. Let's go something like this. Perfect. Okay. Let's Command U for Hue Saturation. Just drop that saturation all the way down. And then from here, yeah, we're pretty much ready to go. So now all we have to do, it's pretty simple. Now we have that done. We're gonna go to select, color range, and from there, like we worked on before, we're just gonna pick white as our selection, and bam, everything that is white or even a slight gray is gonna get picked up. We're gonna hit okay. Now we can actually mute this layer, and we're gonna apply it to our background layer. So here we go. We're going to go down and hit our layer mask, and we have a knockout, which is perfect. It's perfect, just exactly what we needed. So let's go ahead and hit Command J again. We're duplicating. And so our background layer, we can go ahead and delete the layer mask. So now it looks like we just started, but we actually do have a layer now behind that is the full image, and then we have one on top that is just the clouds. So it's really almost ready to go. But what we want to do is actually have the inverse of this, my bad. So Command I is going to be the inverse. And now we have the front image ready to go. So this is going to give us just a little bit more handles for a really quick down and dirty mask, as opposed to going in and like manually trying to paint out each one of these black tree branches and stuff. And you would hate your life if that's what you had to do. So at this point, let's just do a really quick minor cleanup on what we need to do here. So let's click our layer mask button right here. And we can see we're seeing through a little bit of the images here. So let's hit B for brush. And let's make our brush a lot larger, and let's just paint over anything that's kind of showing through a little bit. And that's good. That should be good for now. Easy, easy, easy. Okay, now I want to get rid of these safety cones that are right here. Chances are we won't see them, but it bothers me, so I'm gonna get rid of them real quick. Let's create a new layer. Press J, which is going to bring up your spot healing brush tool. So if that's not selected, just go up to your spot healing. And what we want to do is make sure that sample all layers is toggled at the top. And what it's going to do is it's literally going to see anything that's below it, and it'll adjust accordingly. So I'm going to literally just paint over these, and it should just do a quick garbage out. There we go. We can even paint some of the snow back in, just do a couple passes. Bam, no one would ever know any different. We're good. So sometimes I'll go around the image and just clean up a few things here and there, little speckles that I might want to get rid of. It's really, really simple. Here, it won't matter too much. You know, the snow's kind of melting and it's kind of trash anyways, but at least those cones are now gone. So really quick way to establish that. You can toggle that on and off anytime. Sorry if I actually zoom into the image so you can see. We can actually toggle those on and off anytime. You could even layer mask and paint over it, do whatever you wanted to. So really down and dirty way to clean up your image. At this point, we're going to toggle the background back on, and I think we are ready to bring in our spaceship. So let's go back to the spaceship. We can literally just click and drag it over to our new image. Bam, it's going to appear. And let's go ahead and take this down and sandwich it between our two layers. So now as you can see, I'm actually can kind of hide it behind the horizon. I can actually have it raise up or whatever, and it's actually hiding behind the tree because we made this beautiful mask beforehand. So we're actually sitting quite pretty. It's a very quick way to make something look foreboding. So drop this in, and let's go ahead, and I'm going to hit Command T, and I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to hit Command J. We're just going to duplicate it so it's ready, because I know I'm probably going to put in more than one. So let's get the spaceship. I want this to be huge. I want this to be really, really intimidating. It's coming over the horizon. You know, this house is doomed. My house is doomed. And let's go ahead and hit Command T to bring up selection. And from here, we can go to distort, we can go to warp, whatever we want to do, but I'm going to distort this and just give us a little bit more of an angle so it's not totally symmetrical. So it looks like one side it's actually got a little bit more of a 3D aspect to it. Oops. And horizontal. Let me see. Do I want it this way? No, it's coming towards the house, so we'll go this way. And go back to distort. Let's push this up even a little bit more. And you can kind of have fun with it. If you go too far, it's going to look way too flat and it's going to ruin the illusion, but a little bit goes a long way about kind of, because this is now changed and this is the original. So that's flat on, and this is with a little bit of warping applied. So you can see even just a tiny little bit will often be enough to really just punch it up just a little bit. All right. Cool. And honestly, you can just do whatever makes the most sense to you in these sort of scenarios. What I want to do at this point is really just take this ship and try to make it match into the scene just a little bit better. I kind of like the framing of it right here. is good. In fact, I can probably even increase it just ever so slightly. So it's maybe even breaking out over the top. We don't even see the top. Just make it really, really big, really, really intimidating. And let's see here. So anyways, from here, we can go now into, yeah, let's start colorizing it and kind of make it match our scene a little bit better. So I think what we're actually going to do is our nice blue layers, we're going to apply those secondarily. And so let's go back into, because it's a smart object, I can double click on it and it'll actually bring me back into the comp itself. And I can toggle these off because they were separate layers. And I'm going to go ahead and just click save, and it's going to update my layer back in here. So I think this will work out a little bit better for us. The blue looks cool, and we will apply it back again later, but not right at this second. We can also see I have a little bit of grunge on the edges here where it's not a totally clean mask. And so let's just adjust that real quick back into our layer. And let's go ahead and I can create a brand new black layer at the bottom, so we can kind of see where those bad edgings are, which I'm not really seeing right this second. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's go ahead and hit our layer mask, and we're just going to paint out these bad parts real quick. Boom. And because I'm running through this so fast, you're gonna get some of these kind of stringent issues, but we can go back in and fix whatever. And of course, if you're doing this, you're going to spend a lot more time on it, and it's going to be way more polished than this. This is a kind of a fly through at this point, but I think it'll be enough to give you the idea. So, all right, perfect. So now if I go ahead and save, it's going to update my mask. Beautiful. And let's toggle off the white. Good. Cool. So now we are ready to go. So let's go ahead and hit Command L is going to bring up our levels, and we can darken this, make this a little bit more foreboding, can lift up my shadows. Now, one thing that I noticed for a lot of people that comp that are just getting started is that a lot of times the biggest giveaway is that their black levels don't match. So they might do something like this. So we can see in our scene that the ship is like pure black, but then there's nothing actually pure black in the scene itself. So it's actually taking away the illusion because there should be matching black levels and everything. So your best bet is to try to eyeball it and really try to either bring up or lower or hit that contrast so that your black levels are matching throughout the entire piece. And that's something that will really kind of raise the bar in your comping work. So I want this to be pretty foreboding, like a big heavy shadow coming, you know, later in the evening or early in the morning. I don't really know. I can't tell the difference with the sun. So let's go ahead and darken this quite a bit. So there we go. So this huge foreboding spaceship coming in close. We're gonna go ahead and hit OK. Let's take our top layer, which is right here. It's our whole house, if you remember, and we're gonna apply a layer to this as well. Let's go ahead and at this point, I'm happy with making this into a smart object. From here, we can go to our Command L for levels. And let's just kind of bring down the whole scene a little bit as well. Kind of make this whole scene a little bit more intense. There we go. We'll click OK. Reposition our spaceship ever so slightly. No, I like it where it was. Cool. All right. It's always like fine tuning. There's never like an exact science for where all this should land or what you should do with it. So I'm always kind of back and forth. So this is very, very standard for all of this. All right, cool. So let's do a quick sky replacement to kind of add a little bit darker element to this whole image. I have a dark clouds image. Let's go ahead and drop that in. And we're gonna go ahead and expand this. Make this fit. And so now because we already did the work of eliminating the background and making it a separate layer, we can kind of do whatever we want at this point. It makes the rest of the comping work super, super easy. And our blend mode, we can cycle through a bunch. I think multiply is going to give us what we want, but let me just cycle through a few and see if we have a darker element that looks really nice. This is a really quick toggle. If you hold down Shift and your plus and minus, keys will cycle through your blending modes. It's a really fun tip and trick to like make it really fast. I actually love what luminosity is doing right now, so let's rock that. Let me go ahead and make a layer mask, and we'll hit B for brush. Let's expand that brush really big using our bracket keys. Let's make it a feather, and let's start painting out the part that we don't want. And opacity we can make a little bit less. Make it nice and big, and so now we can paint it exactly what we want. So now we have a nice big foreboding sky in the background. It just makes the coming of this giant beast even more terrifying. Cool. Yes, that works for me. So let's go ahead and take it above our layer. Oops, let's duplicate it, and then take the one cloud layer and put it above our spaceship. So now our spaceship is down below here, and we can adjust our opacity accordingly. So it looks like it's coming down out of the clouds, and we can actually use our brush tool and paint out a little bit until this makes sense. And let's adjust our levels just a little bit. I want to bring back a little bit of that texture still. Still think it needs a little bit. And another tip and trick for cheating really fast too is you can actually lower the opacity of your spaceship itself, and it's going to naturally blend in a little bit of the clouds and the elements that are in the background. If you overdo it, people will see what that is, but if you just want to cheat it, you totally can. You can also apply a layer mask to it, switch over to your black, set your opacity really low, maybe just something like 10% or so, and just start painting out a little bit. So you're actually painting out, but it actually looks really good. It looks really natural. You're sort of blending in some of the outer elements or the background elements into your image. So it looks like a natural glow into your entire image actually. So from there, let's bring back in a few more darks. Yeah, very cool. Really quite easy. So now that this is done here, really quick. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and let's duplicate this. Command J, and we can go to, that's perfect. Let's see. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. So let's go ahead and make a new smart object out of this, convert to smart object. So now we have a second spaceship that's like ready to go. And, oops, my bad. Let's pull this into the scene. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and create to a smart object, Command T, and now I can make this spaceship much smaller, and we can start adding a few more into the scene. So like maybe way in the back, there's already one landing, and let's go ahead and, yeah, maybe somewhere in there. Command T, I'm gonna flip this horizontally, so it's coming in kind of the other angle. And our opacity we can drop way down, so it's like way in the background. And Command J, let's just add another one way up in the sky here. I can even do my distort, and just play with some of these angles here until we find just the right one. That looks good, maybe even a little bit smaller. And yeah, just start adding a whole bunch of these into the scene, so it's really spooky, like there's just a ton of these things starting to land. And you can keep changing, definitely change the sizing and the rotation, the warp, the distortion, anything like that, just until you get exactly the desired look. And definitely the opacity. The further away, the more opaque they should be. Or the less opaque they should be. I never know how to word that. But anyways, you know what I mean. And that's what's important. So from there, we have a pretty spooky scene. And what I want to do is I want to paint out some of the snow in the front. I'm really not liking how that's looking. So let's go ahead and apply a little bit more to our levels. Let's bring this down just a little. Oh, no. Let's keep that house a little bit brighter. Good. And let's create a new adjustment layer of levels. And let's darken. And don't worry, it looks like garbage now, but it won't. Just going to darken everything. Oh, let's throw this on the very top. That's good. We can hit Command I so we don't see it. Brush. And then press X to bring back our white. And now we can change our opacity, maybe a little bit higher. And we can start painting in where we want the darker. So that's obviously like way too intense. So let's take our opacity down on our brush And now we can hit X, and we can literally, just by pressing X, we're toggling white and black, so we're revealing and concealing. And I just want to have a little bit darker down below here so it really accentuates what's going on up top here. So just do a couple of passes until you're happy with how this whole thing kind of looks. So that's looking kind of good. We can even maybe paint a little bit on our edging, create like a slight vignette going on here to really showcase the heaviness of these spaceships coming down. Now what we're gonna do is, let's finish this off with just a little bit of coloring touch-ups. So maybe a brand new layer. I wanna bring back in those blue dots. Let's just hit those up one more time real quick. We remember how we did them, so we'll just make this really fast. Let's do blue and hit our brush and make sure our opacity is set to 100. Good, and then we are just gonna click all around this image. I remember exactly where we had everything. Boom, 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 boom. Something like that, whatever, close enough. And let's go ahead and set those to screen. And we'll hit a brand new layer, and we'll hit D to reset, X to bring up white, make it a little bit smaller, and kind of set in all our glowy points for the engine lights, or whatever you want to call it. Real spooky like that. So then we can just start messing with our opacity a little bit until we're happy with exactly how these look. And there we go. We can as well grab both of them. We can convert to smart object, and now we have them, and we could even throw them on the ones in the back if we wanted to on some of these other ships. Thing is, you probably wouldn't see them because they're so far back, so I'm really not too worried about them because it's really, at that distance, you wouldn't really even see the glowy, but I'm just saying if you wanted to, that's the way you do it, because even if I drop my opacity, yeah, it's almost not even worth dealing with right now. So to kind of wrap up this image then, let's go to, we'll make a new layer, and I want to create kind of like a sunburst, kind of like merge everything together, almost like it's like early morning or late night, like I was saying. So let's go ahead and grab our color. Let me see what a yellow looks like, and we can always adjust this layer. So on our new layer, set brush to bring up, or B to bring up our brush, and let's go ahead and just click anywhere. So now we have our sun layer, and let's say we want to have it like right around here. I don't know, let's just try this. Let's go to change our blend mode to screen, and now we have this like really cool golden haze that's starting to bleed over all the elements. So let's go ahead and just lock that in there. Let's create a new layer, and let's make it white, and select brush, and we can click, and now we have a sun. So we have a white clicked right on top of the yellow, and now with these two elements together, we essentially have like the sun layer that we can move anywhere we want in the image, whatever makes sense, whatever seems the most foreboding. It's actually kind of cool on the left, I'm not gonna lie, kind of like that. And even if I was to maybe move my spaceship over ever so slightly, no, I like it better there. We'll stick with that. We'll stick with our first idea. So once again, really simple to just kind of move this all around to whatever makes sense. I kind of like this here because it glows onto the house, and you can actually start to see another spaceship in the background, and it's all kind of spooky that way. So we'll go ahead and just commit to this. Honestly, I'd probably be thinking about all this a lot more if this was a main run, but right now it's just kind of showcasing the whole process. So now we have that. Now it's time for doing some like kind of overall coloring, and then I think we're good to go. At this point, we can take all our layers, so we can literally just shift click everything. We're gonna convert absolutely everything to a smart object. Just give this a quick second. Perfect. Now everything's in this layer. I can go up to filter. I can go up to camera raw filter. And it's gonna bring up all of our adjustments here. Let me bring this into frame so you can see what we're working with. Perfect. So now at this point, we are ready to do some kind of finalized coloring. So we're almost set with this piece. Go here. So here, let's just do some overall toning. I like the idea of adding a little bit more yellows to my overall color balance, and maybe a little bit more green. And let's just start messing with some of these sliders. We have our contrast, obviously, which is pretty cool. We'll bring that up a little bit. Our clarity is, you can make it a little bit more hazy if you push it the other way, which I often like. Our highlights, make sure we're not too highlighting. And our shadows, of course, to bring them up. So Once again, you can just start finessing with all of this to the desired effect and what makes sense for your composition. But it will bring everything together really nicely, which is great. Yeah, so you can push it and make it nighttime if you wanted to, but we're just gonna go with a little bit more of an orangish, and we'll save that for later. Detail, let's bring up our sharpening a little bit, noise reduction a little bit, and let's go down to here to our shadows. Let's tint our shadows a little bit. Let's kind of bring everything together. I'm gonna go to the kind of the like the orangish side, and you can see you could crush it really high, but that's not what you want. But we want it fairly intense because it's gonna be like a sunsetty sort of look. And to finish things up, under effects, let's add some grain and really kind of bring this together, almost as like it's a really crappy photo off your iPhone, which it started out as. So we'll start with that. We'll make our grain just a tiny bit larger, make it look like an actual iPhone photo. And from there, that's good enough for me. Let's just click OK. Bam, we have some coloring going on here. So right off the bat, the blue is a little intense. So we're gonna double click into this smart object. It's going to open back up here. So let's take this blue. I can hit Command U. It's going to be our hue saturation slider. And I can actually just slide this around until I find a hue that I think would look really cool. And I'm actually going to push for more of the reds, like an orangish yellow. Let's click OK. Let's go ahead and save that. Once that's saved, any second now, updating smart objects. Nailed it. Layer. Oops. There we go. Main photo. Bam. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's a pretty cool image. So there you go. Honestly, there's a lot more you could do with this. Let's just go ahead and just do one quick touch up. And that would be to the main spaceship. Double click into it. Let's go ahead. Yeah, that's our main spaceship right there. I'm going to add an ever so slight blur to all of these. So let's go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. Just add a little sense of movement. So we can choose our angle. I'm gonna have it coming down towards the house. Obviously 90 is way too intense. Let's see what something like a 6 looks like. Maybe 5. So we can see toggled on and off. It has just ever so slight a blur, which really helps sell it. And then obviously the ones in the background, we really should add blur to because they're way in the background. So let's go ahead and filter, blur. Even for this one, we can do Gaussian blur because it's way in the back. And let's just boost that up. If we go too far, you won't even see all your hard work. So let's just do a tiny little bit and we'll repeat it. If you hit Command F, we'll repeat the previous effect on whatever layer you have selected. So we're just going to go through and toggle that for all of these other spaceships in our scene. So honestly, we're just going to hit Save and it's going to update our smart object. And once that's done, back into our photo. And honestly, let's go to curves. We'll add a new curves adjustment layer. Let me just bring down my curves. I'm gonna bring up my base a little bit. Just to add almost like that vintage sort of washed out look to it all. And I think at this point, we're gonna call it. You can kind of finesse these things all day, right? So I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's really to taste at this point. Whatever makes the most sense. You can keep cycling through all your layer colors and just see what works for you and what you really like. And it's totally a personal preference. But for me, I think we're gonna call this. We'll call this Sunset Disaster. I don't know. I got seriously though, I think this gives you at least a rough idea of how to incorporate a whole image together or how I would go about it. Once again, this is super fast. It's super rushed. It goes even faster when I'm not talking about it. But this is kind of the process that I would do just for kind of like a quick daily fun Photoshop piece. So if you guys have any other questions at all, or if you have an idea of what you want me to Photoshop for the next one, please let me know. I would love to start doing more customized tutorials, literally just based off anybody's questions. So leave a question in the comments or Instagram message me or Twitter message me. It doesn't really matter. Hit me up. If you want like even a micro tutorial, like how to use layer masks or whatever it might be, seriously, just reach out. I'd love to do this. I want to start doing this more. Or if you have a custom composition in mind and you want to do something fun, throw it at me. Definitely going to start hitting up these more. So thanks for joining me. And yeah, until next time, see ya!